Thank you, Cahir. Thank you for the time. And I suppose, it's great to hear, I suppose, from Ms. Tansey and Mr. Dalton as well, just about the importance of well-being and the reduction of stress as a major priority, I suppose, when you're looking at the reform here, potentially of the Leaving Cert, and I suppose what will come out of your NCCA assessment. And again, Anne, just wonderful to hear about that leaflet that's emailed to all students and parents. I'm on the mental health committee, so, it's great to know that mymind.org, I know there's access there to counselling and it's very reasonable. And, if there's been an impact through COVID, I believe it's free currently. And then also the Turn to Me. And if I might also add the text line number 24/7 50808 for any students, I suppose, going through any difficult times at the moment. And I know we have more so our third level students probably facing exam pressures at the moment as well. Just if I might, a few questions, and if I might, Mr. Tatton or Dalton, if I may, just the report, as you said, is coming back from the NCCA, and that it's an analysis, I suppose, of the period from 2016 to 2020. In it, in your opening statement, you just mentioned that 62%, I believe, of subjects currently have some type of continuous assessment. However, I think you acknowledge as well that, your core sort of subjects, wouldn't have that. Can I ask you, would it be a consideration in terms of the reform that those core subjects can be looked at? So obviously, I'm sure there's lots of elements that you're going to be looking at. And I know you've highlighted that we have to maintain the integrity of the exams, which is crucial. But I suppose a lot of the stakeholders and witnesses that are coming before us really speak to how the Leaving Cert, perhaps that we have at the moment, which is, is a standalone, and it has a very good reputation, but perhaps for businesses today, for the challenges and future skills that we see going forward, that there could be perhaps changes that we can consider, and that reform is really something that I think it would benefit both students, parents, and potentially future employers as well, and our society. I mean, we're developing our leaders of the future as well through our educational system. Just, I suppose the question is, how could we look at perhaps expanding the continuous assessment of those remaining key subjects at Leaving Cert? Is that something that could happen on an ongoing basis, or does it need to wait for the report to come out and then potential reform at a longer sort of timeline? Also, just the digital learning plans. I mean, I was very pleased to see the announcement from Minister Norma Foley this week. We had nearly 3 million, I think, for schools, both primary and secondary schools this week, I suppose, in terms of reducing the digital divide. That is a big concern, particularly in areas of disadvantage and DESH schools where there is a digital divide. And yet we hear from the expert group on future skills last week that, digital skills is one of the key crucial skills. In fact, it was their number one point about how we ensure that our students are ready to face the future and the challenges that are ahead of them in terms of environmental, climate action, even dealing with the likes of the pandemic, even understanding and being able to use critical thinking about research and evidence base. We need our students coming out and Leaving Cert to be able to tackle the huge amounts of data that we now see on all platforms and social media, and been able to distinguish with a clear thinking mind, all that type of data. And I also just want to compliment in terms of the circular that was sent out by the department along with that announcement. It spoke about really exciting options, robotics and coding for primary schools, and it spoke about in secondary school, I think, using simulation and game-based learning to assist students. And I must admit, I nearly felt like wanting to go back. So I thought that was really good, and I thought it was very positive. And it was just excellent to see that been supported. And I know very much targeted double funding to DESH and I suppose to areas of disadvantage, and representing, I suppose, Roscommon and Galway, we would have areas where you are, there are areas of disadvantage, and we do need to support those students. So thank you, Garmagas. Dalton or Anne, if you wish to come in. Thank you.
Okay, Senator, thank you very much for those. So on the report, from the NCCA, and I mentioned the 62%, but you're right, and I think I said it at the beginning. All right, there's a lot of the very big subjects. If you think of subjects like English or maths, for example, essentially they may have two papers, but they're the same. It's a written paper, two written papers. There's no other form of assessment really. There's a number of other business subjects. There's another example of that too. So there's still areas where many or most students are taking subjects in which there is only the determinant exam. So mean, the trajectory over the last number of years has been, with either new subjects or updating of existing subjects, is to try and build in additional assessment components. So I think we would see that as a feature going forward, as part of senior sector reform, and it's ongoing. So even things like the Leaving Cert Science subjects at the moment we'll be looking at, which are currently in a development phase with the NCCA and don't have an additional assessment component, trying to build one into that, and one that is meaningful in terms of that there's a minimum sort of percentage level that's reasonable, so that it's worth the effort of having something that's different, but also that it is different in the sense that it tests different competences in the same subject area. So it shouldn't be just a written exam in disguise, if you like. It should be something that is quite different, so that the broader range of skills and the sort of things that you've talked about there, like critical reasoning, like collaboration, communication, and so on, can be demonstrated in a way that a terminal exam just doesn't provide the same opportunity. I think too, you talked about the timing of this and not maybe waiting a long time to see some of these things arrive. And I think that would be part of our thinking too, that there are some things that will require, I'm sure, further development work, further engagement with stakeholders and so on. But others are probably things that perhaps we can move on maybe more quickly. And really what we should be doing here, I think, is to move as quickly as we can with things in it. And they will all ultimately join up. I think we have to be careful that we don't confuse the system or overload students in doing that. So it has to still all work for those students going through the system. But I think there's a way that things can happen sooner than waiting for everything to arrive in place, 5 years or 10 years from now or something like that. On the digital piece, and yeah, we obviously there was the recent announcement in relation to that, and there's also the digital strategy for schools, which is gone through consultation and would hope to be finalised early now in 2022. So it remains a really important area for us, and you've mentioned it. It's a number one for some groups there. And I think one of the things that was interesting about the announcement yesterday is that you talked about some of the examples there of things that schools can do. It was designed to try and give schools the opportunity to innovate for themselves, rather than it being dictated centrally from the department, that actually schools can have different ways of approaching this depending on what their needs are and how they want to move. But it remains a really important area for us. And it is just part of just those 21st century skills, which it's just an absolute must-have for students coming out of school.
Very, very much so. Sorry, Chair, do I have another minute? Or
go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to mention actually that we have an excellent school, just a small school outside of Ballinasloe in Clontuskert, who just won the first ever Climate Action Project Award, and they'd be a Microsoft school as well, and Green Flag, and just I think that the teaching staff and the principals that we have in our schools across the country, but for a school in a small town, in East Galway, competing on the world stage, to win an award that was allocated at the IOP, and it just it was incredible to see it. But it just shows that with technology, there is a levelling. I mean, there's the point of view of having access to devices, but also when you have technology, you can compete in any forum. I would maybe just ask a quick question just around how we can. I know that, say, Science Foundation Ireland spoke a little bit about accreditation for teachers, and I know from SFI that there would have been training programs at times with, say, centres of excellence, and that teachers could participate in this. And it was about, learning new research skills or learning about the research environment at the time or what was happening in a particular subject area. And, it drives passion and engagement and enthusiasm. But I suppose, how do we do that across other subjects, and particularly maybe around digital skills, where, I must admit that I probably don't feel like I'm totally au fait with everything that's happening at the moment. So is there a way that we can do that when teachers and principals at the moment, after the last year and 18 months, are so overwhelmed? I know that they have such a heavy load, and I know that they sometimes can be at breaking point. So I just wonder, does the department have any ideas about how we do this in a way that will enable teachers to support them and yet not be an extra additional load on top? And then just, I suppose, very finally, just the student voice just on the exams this year. I know that you just mentioned very briefly, I know that there probably isn't any decision yet, I suppose, on the exams coming up this year, but I suppose just that student voice in that decision making, I think that the Minister Foley spoke about that was a key part, I think, in the last couple of years, and I think that she's very focused on that. So maybe how that might look, maybe that consultation process in the next number of months. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Senator. On the issue of the teachers, and maybe Evan may want to come in at the end, or just on anything else you want to say in terms of SFI or STEM. But I would say just generally, and I think this is a learning we took out of some of the junior cycle experience, is that we need to find ways to really support teachers well in the context of senior cycle review. And I think a lot of that comes down to time, ensuring that they have the time that they need to engage, when there is development work going on, when there is change happening. Because, and you've said it yourselves, like the pressure that, is faced in schools all the time, there just hasn't been that time at all. And there probably wasn't before, and there certainly hasn't been over the last 18 months for teachers out there. So I think that we have to find ways to ensure that we can support the curriculum reform we want, because teachers need to be properly enabled, and some of that is, and we talked a couple of minutes ago about giving schools a sort of autonomy about innovation when it comes to digital. It is about, I think, being able to listen to schools, and schools are, in some ways, they have a lot of shared experiences and shared challenges, but they're also unique. And you talked about, say, the school, for example, Ballinasloe as just one, and lots of different schools have different strengths, and then they've also challenges that they face. So finding ways to support the group of teachers that are there that speaks to them is important. And I think we need to find ways to be able to be adaptive in order to do that. And as I say, give them the time as well. On the student voice, we do, of course, we have our exams advisory group, and the ISSU is represented on that. And outside of those more formal structures that we use to engage on exam issues, we also have direct engagement with the Secondary Students' Union as well on issues. And we had one relatively recently and had a conversation in the context of 2022 as well. So we find that, and we certainly found in the context of 2021, that voice hugely enriching in terms of the thinking that we needed to give to our response in the sort of disruption that had happened in January and February at the beginning of the year. So that engagement will continue, and in fact we expect that we will be meeting the group again fairly soon, particularly to talk about the orals and how they'll operate for the current Leaving Cert students. So I don't know, Evelyn, is there anything you want to add on the SFI, please?
Yeah, thanks, Dalton. First of all, just coming back to the Senator's point about, not overloading the teachers and seeing if there's something we can do, just to say that the curriculum from early childhood to senior cycle now offers multiple opportunities for the development of digital skills and digital literacy, both through integration into the curriculum and the classroom, but also there is additional explicit curriculum provision as well. Just in relation to the Senator's comments there about the school and the climate action, well done to the school. I'm delighted to hear that. I've got responsibility for education and sustainable development. It's one of my areas. And we've had one strategy, and we're in the process of developing another, which will be lining up with the Sustainable Development Goals. And as part of that, we're ensuring that sustainable development is integrated into specifications. And in fact, I'd be delighted to send the Senator just a one-page that shows how it's integrated into all, how the Sustainable Development Goals are integrated into the curriculum at present. And we followed up with the National Council for Curriculum Assessment just yesterday to remind them to continue as they develop new specifications that they're moving more and more in this direction. And they confirmed that they were, and they're very conscious of the need to move more in that area as well. Just in relation to STEM then, I mentioned that we have an education policy statement 2017 to 2026. And I suppose an area, or one of our key pillars in that, is to enhance early years practitioner and teacher capacity and to support STEM education practice. And I suppose one of the things that we have done is we have developed a CPD, a continuous professional development framework, which supports the cross-sectoral design and delivery of STEM CPD, so the teachers can avail of that, and that will help them to deliver then in the classroom.
Thank you so much, Evelyn. And I suppose, no, that's wonderful to know. I'll send on details of the school. And finally, just a very quick comment, just to acknowledge Sport Ireland as well, that works with primary schools, particularly the Marathon for Kids programme. If I can just highlight that, that is something that's been rolled out, I think, in a number of schools in our area. And I know that David Gillick, the athlete, came down, and it's all about building healthy and active routines for children. And it's about their mental health and well-being, but it's just, been good for the head and good for the heart. And I just want to thank, I suppose, the contribution from our teachers and principals with the Department of Education and working with Sport Ireland on that particular programme. I think it's a wonderful way to get good habits and routines, which I still don't have, but at a young age, that you would keep going and keep it up. It really is wonderful. So just to thank the groups on that. And thank you, Chair, for your latitude. Thank you very much.